Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Divan, the Supremely Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We pay homage to the Blessed One, Supremely Enlightened Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We pay homage to our teacher, Ukkacelasutta Wahanse. Sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so now we are going to learn another beautiful sutta. Yeah, you can see here the Ukkacelasutta and translated by Bhikkhu Sujata. So we should be grateful to all these Bhantes and other lay people who have translated these suttas. Okay, so let's see what we can learn from this sutta. The Ukkacela is the name of a village.
Okay, at Ukkacela. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Vajis near Ukkacela on the bank of the Ganges River, together with a large sangha of mendicants. It was not long after Sariputta and Moggallana had become fully extinguished. Now, at the time, the Buddha was sitting in the open, surrounded by the sangha of mendicants. Then the Buddha looked around the sangha of mendicants who were silent. He addressed them, "Mendicants, this assembly seems empty to me now that Sariputta and Moggallana have become fully extinguished. When Sariputta and Moggallana were alive, my assembly was never empty. I had no concern for any region where they stayed. The Buddhas of the past or the future have pairs of chief disciples who are no better than Sariputta and Moggallana were to me."
So now you can see here, this sutta was preached by the Buddha after the chief disciples of the Buddha passed away, right? So you can see those statues of the chief disciples. They are the chief disciples of the Buddha, the Sariputta Arahantera and the Moggallana Arahantera. So Buddha was talking about them. So the chief disciples of the Buddha. So those standing statues represent the chief disciples. So it was not long after Sariputta and Moggallana Arhanteros had become fully extinguished. That means they have attained final passing away. Final passing away. What is the meaning of final passing away? Huh? Yes, so they lived as enlightened monks. They lived as enlightened monks, and that was their final life. They were bearing their final body, and when they pass away, it's not like ordinary beings passing away. What is the difference? When ordinary beings die, they go to another body. That means they are reborn. That means they will have another body in a different shape. And if they are born in the animal womb, in an animal womb, they will have a body of an animal. So that's the meaning of going to another body. If they are born in the hell world, they will have a body of a hell being. If they are born in the ghostly realm, they will have a body of ghost. If they are born in a mother's womb again, they will have a human body. If they are born in a heavenly realm, they will have a heavenly body. So different shape of body. So that happens to all the ordinary people who have not yet attained full enlightenment, the arahantship. So And it keeps happening. We leave one body behind and we get another body again. And so what is the nature of this body? It is fragile. It is subject to sickness, subject to aging, right? Old age, subject to destruction, subject to problems, right? We suffer. Suffering comes to our life when these things happen to our body. So it's a main source of pain, this body. And every time when we are born, we are going to die. So this is what enlightened beings realize. And they realize the origin of this body, the root cause of this continuous process of receiving, obtaining these fragile bodies. Not only the body, they understand the meaningless nature of these 5 aggregates of clinging. Body is only one aggregate of them. So there are 5 aggregates of clinging. Aggregate of form, which is the physical body. Wherever we are born, we are going to have a body which is subject to change and subject to suffering. Wherever we are born, we will have an aggregate of feeling. Because we will have eyes in every life. We will have eyes, we will have ears, we will have a nose, we will have a tongue, we will have a body, and we will have a mind. So because we obtain these 6 senses, of course, based on our karma, we are contacted by feelings, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But this feeling is, as Buddha realized, is a source of suffering. All the 5 aggregates of clinging are included in the first noble truth, Ukkacelasutta. Wherever we are born, we are going to obtain the 3rd aggregate of clinging, which is perception, sanya. So through our senses, dependent on our contact, the perceptions will arise. Perception means perception of sights, perception of sounds, perception of smells, perception of tastes, perception of tangibles, and perception of thoughts. And this is how we suffer. We try to control these perceptions. We try to control these feelings. We think we own them. We think they belong to us. We think we should have a control over them. We don't understand the conditioned nature of those formations. Wherever we are born, we are going to obtain the 4th aggregate of clinging, which is sankhara, volitional formations, right? So dependent on contact through our sense bases, these thoughts arise. They are the things that create suffering in our life. Thoughts about what we see, thoughts regarding sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, and thoughts. So as Buddha realized, this also should be understood as the noble truth of suffering. And wherever beings are born, they receive the 5th aggregate of clinging, which is consciousness, vijnana. Consciousness, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. So this is the life. Another name for life is the 5 aggregates of clinging. Why is there suffering in the world? It's not because suffering is created by somebody else. It's not because suffering happens by chance. Why is there suffering? Why suffering exists in the world? Because these 5 aggregates of clinging exist. So every time when we die, as ordinary beings who have not attained enlightenment, we are going to be reborn. Another life. In any realm, according to our karma. Karma will decide which realm we are going to be reborn next. And wherever we are born, we will have another set of 5 aggregates of clinging. And that is, again, the cause of suffering. That is the suffering itself. Can you see, like, we are kind of like stuck in a prison? There is no freedom. The suffering is an inherent quality when there is the existence of 5 aggregates of clinging, because the reason is yada niccang tan dukkha. Buddha explains, whatever is impermanent is suffering. That is the reason why suffering arises in the world. When something is impermanent, it is suffering. Impermanent means things are subject to change. If the body was not subject to change, we will never get sick. If the body was not subject to change, we will never grow old. If the body was not subject to change, we will never die. And that is the body we expect. That's the body everybody expects. A body that does not generate pain and suffering. That is the deep darkness, the ignorance, delusion we have. Why? We can never get such a body with this ordinary pattern of our life. And then feelings are also subject to change. And we don't want to accept that truth. We want to hold on to our favorable feelings, desirable feelings. But when the feeling changes, we start crying. We get depressed. Because we want feelings that are not subject to change. Right? And Buddha realized this is how suffering arises. Same thing when perception change, volitional formations change, consciousness changes. We don't want to accept that change. We don't see that as a conditioned thing. We don't understand them in the light of dependent origination, cause and effect mechanism. We try to understand them with this notion of self. Notion of self. Me, I am, myself. And this is the prison we need to come out of. The prison of self. Prison of me, I am, myself. And outside that prison is the freedom. And that is the freedom experienced by the enlightened beings. By the Buddha, by the enlightened monks and enlightened nuns. And they understand the peace, the lasting peace, true happiness, liberation outside that prison. They experience it. They live with that beautiful feeling. And so they spend their time with that permanent happiness as long as their lifespan is over. So when their lifespan is over, because there are no negative qualities, unwholesome qualities, defilements in their mind, there is no supporting factors. There are no supporting factors that would give another life to them, another rebirth. All the supporting conditions have been ceased. So that becomes their final life. That is the end of suffering. And they attain full extinguishment. That's the meaning. It was not long after Sariputta and Moggallana had become fully extinguished. What is the Pali word for that? Parinibhute. That's the meaning for fully extinguished. Achira parinibhute. Not long after they have attained final extinguishment. So now at that time the Buddha was sitting in the open, surrounded by the sangha of many mendicants, right? So maybe some monks who were not yet enlightened, they were crying because Sariputta and Arhat Moggallana Theros were very helpful for the fellow monks. Maybe they were crying or they were very sad. But the enlightened monks, they don't cry. They don't feel that sadness inside because they have escaped from all kinds of suffering. So the Buddha looked around the sangha of monks who were silent, saying, "Monks, this assembly seems empty to me now that Sariputta and Moggallana have become fully extinguished." Can you see how Buddha considered their presence in an assembly? When Sariputta and Moggallana Arhat Theros were alive, my assembly, means that the entire community of monks, my assembly was never empty. I had no concern for any region where they stayed. That means Buddha knew in any area at that time in India, any province, even far away, if Buddha's monks were there and if Arhat Sariputta Thera and Moggallana Thera were with them, Buddha didn't want to think about that area because the assembly was very well taken care of by the chief disciples, giving perfect guidance, advice, instructions, and everything. It was such a support for the Buddha's Dhamma propagation came from those chief disciples. In some occasions when Buddha felt tired after preaching many hours, Buddha would invite these chief disciples to continue the sermon. That was the confidence the Buddha had towards these chief disciples. And Buddha continues, the Buddhas of the past or the future have pairs of chief disciples who are no better than Sariputta and Moggallana were to me. So Buddha says, all the previous Buddhas also had chief disciples. And and Buddha, in other discourses, Buddha revealed their names as well, different names for those chief disciples, all the previous Buddhas. And Buddha also says, all the future Buddhas will have chief disciples like Arhat Sariputta Thera and Arhat Moggallana Thera with great qualities, with great compassion for their fellow monks. They were the only chief disciples for the Gautama Supreme Buddha. So when you see those statues, you can recollect their qualities. The statues are always beside the Buddha statue. The real life also was like that, always supporting the Buddha's Dhamma propagation. And now you better understand the meaning of these statues, right? With these discourses.
It's an incredible and amazing quality of such disciples that they fulfill the teacher's instructions and follow his advice. And they're liked and approved, respected and admired by the four assemblies. And it's an incredible and amazing quality of the realized one that when such a pair of disciples become fully extinguished, he does not sorrow or lament. How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to wear out should not wear out? That is not possible. Suppose there was a large tree standing with heartwood, and the largest branches fell off. In the same way, in the great Sangha that stands with heartwood, Sariputta and Moggallana become fully extinguished. How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to wear out should not wear out? That is not possible.
So now you can see here. And the other amazing thing, so the Buddha explained about the amazing quality of the chief disciples first, and now Buddha explains the amazing quality of the Tathagatas, of the enlightened ones. Even when such a pair of disciples have become fully extinguished, the Buddha does not feel sorrow. Buddha does not feel sadness. Buddha doesn't get upset. Buddha doesn't cry. Why? Buddha has liberated from all mental suffering. There is no sadness, no stress, no feeling of loneliness. How could it possibly be so that what is Buddha thinks like this? When chief disciples pass away, when these things happen, when things change, Buddha always thinks, how could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to wear out should not wear out? That is not possible. Buddha teaches. When these people who are subject to death, when they die, how can we stop it? That's a powerful lesson from the Buddha. This is because of this realization, Buddhas never cry. All the Buddhas, all the enlightened ones, they don't feel sad, they don't feel lonely, they don't feel any mental suffering, because they understand the nature of the conditioned things. What is the nature of the conditioned things? They are liable to wear out, they are liable to change, right? So Buddha teaches this beautiful simile, right? Suppose there was a large tree standing with hardwood and the largest branches fell off. In the same way, in the great Sangha that stands with hardwood, Sariputta and Moggallana have fully become extinguished, right? And Buddha teaches all beings who are born are subject to death. No one can stop it. And then Buddha saw some monks were very sad because they have not yet attained liberation. They have not fully comprehended the teachings. Those who have fully comprehended the teachings, they live with an equanimous mind, understanding the same Dhamma point, that everything is conditioned, everything is subject to change, so they don't cry. Even those heavenly beings who have attained the higher stages of enlightenment, they don't cry. And that happened when the Buddha passed away. Some monks were crying near the Buddha's the holy body. And then Arhan, the enlightened monks, saw Devas, the heavenly beings, the higher gods were not happy about that. about the monks crying, and monks being sad, because those higher gods had advanced realization than these monks had. So then those higher gods were talking about this, and the enlightened monks heard about their discussions. They were talking, oh, these monks are sad, these monks are crying. It's not the way to respect the enlightened one, because when the enlightened one was alive, didn't he teach this Dhamma? Didn't he ask his disciples to understand the true nature of life, not to be sad, not to cry when things change, when people die? Why aren't these monks reflecting on these teachings? So then Arahant Bhante told about that to these monks who were sad and crying. This is how these higher gods think about you. So please don't cry. Please don't be sad and upset. They are not happy about it. They say this is not the best way to be grateful for the enlightened one.
So Mexicans live as your own island, your own refuge, with no other refuge. Let the teaching be your island and your refuge, with no other refuge. And how does a mendicant do this? It's when the mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feelings, mind, principles, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for it. That's how a mendicant lives as their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge. That's how the teaching is their island and their refuge, with no other refuge. Whether now or after I have passed, any who shall live as their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge, with the teaching as their island and their refuge, with no other refuge. Those mendicants of mine who want to train shall be among the best of the best.
Yes, so this is Yantang Jatang Bhutang Sankhatang Paloka Dhamma Tangmatame Palujatiti Netang Tanang Vijati. So whatever is born, Yantang Jatang, Bhutang, whatever is created by the karma, Sankhatang, whatever is conditioned, right? Conditioned. Paloka Dhamma, whatever is liable to wear out, should not wear out. That is not possible. And this is the powerful advice from the Buddha. Tasmat hiya bhikkhave atta deepa viharata. Live as your own island, atta deepa. There are two words, deepa and padipa. Padipa means lamp. Deepa means island. This is the translation of deepa. Atta sarana. Live as your own refuge. Ananya sarana. Live with no other refuge. And what is your island of safety? Dhammadeepa. Your island, the safe island is the Dhamm. You should find your secure island with the Dhamma. Dhamma will be your safe area. Dhammadeepa, Dhamma Sarana. Let the teaching, the Dhamma be your island and your refuge. Ananya Sarana, with no other refuge. Dhamma is your refuge. And then Buddha teaches, and how to achieve that? How to achieve that? This is very powerful. How to achieve that secure island in our life? How to achieve that powerful refuge in our life, so that we will not be helpless. We will be strong, we will be well established in safety, in assurance. So we don't need to fear about our future or present or about our existence at all. How to achieve that powerful freedom in life? Buddha explains it is by practicing mindfulness. Kaye kayanupassī viharati. Practicing the mindfulness techniques as shown by the Buddha with regard to the body. Being mindful. Atapi sampajano satima. Making great effort to be established on wholesome qualities. Vinaya loke abhijja domanassa. We should practice this mindfulness mentioned in the Kayanupassana, removing the desire, the greediness, the craving and attachment, and also the rejection, the aversion, sadness for the life, abandoning unwholesome qualities. So there are 4 aspects of mindfulness, establishment of mindfulness. First one is Kayanupassana, right? Meditating on the aspect of the body. Second one is Vedananupassī, meditating, observing the aspect of feelings. Remember the problem, the source of suffering in this life we discussed in the beginning. There was body, right? One of those 5 was the body. Now, the solution is to understand the true nature of this body. Now you can understand, because the lack of understanding of the true nature of the body, we suffer. And now Buddha teaches the Dhamma to understand the true nature of the body, so then we will be liberated from suffering. Because Kayanupassana is all about understanding the true nature of the body through these powerful mindfulness techniques. And remember the Vedana, the second aggregate of clinging, we discussed about the craving for the feelings aggregate is another source of suffering. So now the second mindfulness technique is about understanding the true nature of the feelings. See, feelings. So it's very clear how this path leads to ending suffering. Very, very clear. And then the third aspect of mindfulness is meditating, observing the aspect of mind. Chitte chittanupassī viharati. So practicing mindfulness in order to understand the true nature of the mind. And then the last one is Dhammesu Dhammanupassī viharati. Meditating on the mindfulness techniques about the wisdom factors, about the 5 aggregates of clinging, about the 6 sense bases, about the 4 noble truths. So those are the 4 aspects. So do you remember the 4 aspects in Pali? Kaye kayanupassī. Second one, Vedanasu vedananupassī. Third one, Chitte chittanupassī. Fourth one, Dhammesu dhammanupassī. The meaning: meditates by observing an aspect of the body. Second one, meditate observing an aspect of the feelings. Third one, meditate observing an aspect of the mind. Fourth one, meditate observing an aspect of the principles, means the Dhamma factors, the wisdom factors. And Buddha teaches this is how, if you live your life practicing these techniques of mindfulness, establishing your mind in these wholesome areas, that is how you can live as your own island your own refuge with no other refuge. That is how the Dhamma is your island, is your refuge, and with no other refuge. And Buddha teaches, whether now or after I have passed away, those who live establishing their minds on these four aspects of mindfulness are the ones who train themselves as the best disciples of the Buddhas. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So in other classes, we have discussed about these four aspects of mindfulness in details. But if you like to read more about it, in our library, in our bookshop, we have a book called The Establishments of Mindfulness. Also, you can read Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the greater discourse on the mindfulness. And you can read many suttas about mindfulness, development of mindfulness. And this book, in this book, there is a chapter called Satipatthana Samyutta, the chapter on the mindfulness.
I was just looking at the sentence, admired by the four assemblies.
Oh
Is-
yeah, I wanted to explain about that. I just forget that, and you asked the exact question. The Arahant, Buddha teaches here, Arahant Sariputta and Moggallana Theros were liked by the four assemblies. They were approved, they were respected and admired by the four assemblies. Chatunancha Parisana is the Pali word for four assemblies. Ya Bhavisanti, Manapa, Garu, Bhavaniyaj. So the four assemblies means the term used by the Buddha for the entire community of disciples of the Buddha. So four groups of disciples. So the first group is the monks. Second group is the nuns. Third group is the male lay followers. Fourth group is the female lay followers. So that is the meaning of the four assemblies. Because all those categories of group people follow the same path, the same noble eightfold path with the intention of attaining enlightenment, nibbana or nirvana. So Buddha teaches monks admired chief disciples, nuns admired chief disciples, upasakas, the male lay followers admired chief disciples, upasikas, the female lay followers admired chief disciples. They all liked Arahant Sariputta Bhante and Arahant Moggallana, but those Arahant Theras.
Buddha made mention of telling the mendicants that they have to have themselves as their own island, own refuge, no other refuge. And Buddha also mentioned about Dhamma, okay, as your island, as Bhante mentioned a while ago. What about Bhante Kalyanamitas? So can Kalyanamitas be our island, serve as our island? And that is the reason because
how the
the preaching
Kalyanamitas connect with this is as Dhamma is taught to us by Kalyanamitas, by spiritual friends. If we don't practice these techniques of mindfulness, let's say Kalyanamitas teach us the Dhamma, the spiritual friends teach us the Dhamma, but we don't practice. We are not established in these four aspects of mindfulness. Will there be a refuge?
No.
No. But Kalyanamitas keep teaching us them. So the Kalyanamitas become an external factor. So this practice of mindfulness, meditation, the Noble Eightfold Path, is an internal factor. It's internal. Only when the internal practice are very well developed, then the secure island is created. Otherwise, the Kalyanamitas will be always teaching, but you don't practice, still we are in danger. because the safe island is not created. The true refuge is not created. So what is the name of the discourse? It is Ukkacelasutta, because Buddha was staying in the land of Vajis near Ukkacela village on the bank of the Ganges river.